Excited to be chatting with this panel. As Gino mentioned, this panel is called The Scroll Never Stops. And we're going to talk to this panelist of marketers about how do you decide when to move fast or slow down to invest in something in the right way. Before we do so, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Lana Slygh, and I am here representing a brand. It's a financial services brand named Target. I'm introducing myself for you. Named Thrivent. Yeah, that's you.
Yeah. We're from the same city, so it's easy to get us confused. So Scott Swartz, I lead the creative team at Target. I'm excited to be here with all of you.
And we're sharing the microphone as well. My name is Fabio Ruffet. I work for Mars Snacking, and I lead creativity around a number of brands and the region of Europe and Central Eurasia.
And I'm Mark Rooks. I'm here from Dick's Sporting Goods, and I'm head of creative and entertainment at Dick's.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. So at this point, everybody's competing for the same 1.7 seconds of our customers' attentions. And when you're thinking about how to do it in the right way, I'd love to get your all's perspective on when you bring in a creator or an influencer, how much do you let them steer versus you lead the way? That's an open question to the team.
Well, I can start. So let me first just introduce Thrivent a little bit. We are a financial services provider out of Minneapolis, and we really put generosity in the heart of saving and investing. So we're a member-owned, 120-year legacy organization. And so for financial services, we are a highly regulated brand. I operate under FINRA. We operate under state insurance. We operate under FDIC. So for us, I've really gotten our organization comfortable being uncomfortable. So many meetings with legal and compliance teams, with my own brand team, and saying, yes, there needs to be some bumpers, some safe space, but I really want those bumpers to be as wide as open and possible for creators to truly tell their own real, authentic story of their experience with our brand. So I say, there are some brand safety rules, but they have to be as wide as possible because we're already doing amazing brand content. So I'm telling the story from our side, but it really is allowing them the freedom to tell it from their perspective, real human stories, creating that emotional connection.
Great. So Scott from Target. So the way I would think about whether we let creators steer or bring their voice to the table, I think the biggest thing is to never push them too far. You don't want to treat creators like talent you've cast for an ad. And I think letting their authenticity come through, letting their voice be heard is really important. And I think we do that best when we find creators that are already talking about our brand. They're already fans of the brand. They shop Target. We're already showing up in their feeds. And so working with them and giving them a really smart, clear brief on what we're talking about and letting them do it in their authentic voice. We might give them speaking points we want them to hit, but I want them to say it in their voice, in their way. And we have a really good real-time example happening right now. We have a big sale event coming up called Circle Deal Days, and we have two different duos of creators that already create content together, and they're very different. Personalities are different, their vibe is different, and the way they're bringing those messages to life before the event and in the event just feels like the stuff that they already do about us, even when we didn't help produce it or pay for it. So I think that's what works best for our brand.
Similar. So working with brands such as M&M's or Snickers or Twix, I think the question, I will probably bring it back one step, which is, what is the DNA of the brand that provides that framework within the freedom that you're happy to provide? I think it's really important to let go, and I think it's the most difficult thing that marketeers find, in the sense of providing that sort of space for creators to do what they do best. I think the times when brands become heavy-handed in that space is when the work really shows up as very disingenuous. So I think having that clarity of brand, that clarity of the passion point you're going after, having that connectivity to what people expect of the brand. So those creators that you're working with, they have the chance to not feel like they're selling out to a brand and doing something because they're being contracted. On the contrary, it helps them and it helps the brand. So once you find that sort of balance, I think it's a win-win situation. It really works. We have cases over and over where we see the result is both beneficial for the creators and the brand, and the results are incredible. So it's kind of making sure the brand is clear and where you're operating, and then just letting go a little bit of that control.
Yeah, we have a program called the Varsity Team where we have 60 or so brand ambassadors that create content for us, and it's a mix of celebrity athletes and parents and also store teammates. And what we try to do is put a lot of time into selecting those creators for what they bring to the table, their true talent. And by the time we get to content creation, we try to eliminate as many guardrails as we can so that we get the best out of them, right? We've brought them into the family because we believe they're truly special and talented and can bring something to our story. So the last thing we want to do at that point is tell them, hey, here are the 10 things that you need to do or how you need to do it. Like, they're not built like that. They're not an agency, right? I mean, it's important for us to remember that. And so what we find is we get the best talent and the best results out of creators when we give them a little bit of leeway. So.
Excellent. I'm hearing a lot of authenticity. It makes a lot of sense. Honesty. People want to relate. And people have this incredible emotional attachment to these creators too, right? They don't want it to be influenced. So the first question, Lana, I'm going to start with you, but I would love everybody's opinion on this. As we dive a little bit deeper into creating real, authentic content that resonates with new audience, how do you avoid creating overly polished content and more real content that resonates and is still aligned with your brand?
Absolutely good question. So I think for a legacy brand, there's an ecosystem of content that we're producing. And we have lovely, polished brand content that's doing amazing things to grow awareness and consideration. I think about the work that we're doing with creators, which generally is a little less polished and a little bit more raw. And then I also think about a cool opportunity that we have at Thrivent is really our user-generated content. So we have a cool program at Thrivent called Thrivent Action Team. So twice a year, we, as a purpose-driven brand, give our members $250 to go out and do good in their community. And so think of it as seed money for a global or a local, community or cause or charity that they hold dear in their heart. So from that, we get thousands and thousands of pieces of user-generated content every single month. And so that generally is more raw, but I think about when we take, the user-generated content with the creator content and the brand content, it's really talking about like, what is that mix? What are those real authentic stories we're telling and in what sort of platforms? And so thinking about storytelling versus what are the media channels and how are we feeling these media channels? So it's a mix. I just always think about the intentionality behind the content. Let's not use raw as a reason to be sloppy. So as long as it's real good human stories creating connections, it can be anywhere across the spectrum.
Keep going. Yeah, I can share one thing. Like from a Target perspective, we have a program called Club Target that really rewards people for sharing their real live experiences of shopping the brand, experiencing the brand, and it's really an open place for you could have 500 followers or 200,000 followers, and you share your content and you get rewarded for that content, and it really creates this open space for those folks to do that in the most authentic way. On the flip side of that, I think they're like, especially with our brand, there's a place for really produced content, and we've done some amazing collaborations like Stranger Things with the finale of that series, where we created an entire episodic series that was all social content that had a side story for Ted Wheeler. And spoiler alert if you haven't watched the end, right? Like there's a moment when his wife is getting attacked and he goes after the Demogorgon with a golf club, and he bought that golf club at Target because if you watched our side content that we created with the Duffer Brothers and Netflix, it's sort of like that's when I think produced content really has a place, because it has a place in culture. People are looking for those Easter eggs and those nuggets and that extension of a fandom that they're already a part of.
I couldn't agree more. I love the idea of kind of integrating that incentive into people's life, and it becomes a routine. So I'd love to learn more about that. That sounds super interesting. I think the way we are kind of working more and more in this domain is understanding the growth audiences and design targets. So what are the interests of our audiences? And therefore, working backwards, what sort of creators are the ones that really having, a role in the lives of our consumers? And then backwards from there is working stories that within the brand platform, it makes sense. So it kind of feels like a little bit working backwards, but it's starting with the consumer at the heart. And that is the point. Understanding what is their interest as opposed to what is that we want to say. And then therefore, let's push it out with a new channel called creators. That kind of probably is the wrong way to approach it. And, we learn, we apply learnings as we go along. And we're finding this is quite a step change. The other thing that we are utilizing with the power of AI to be able to understand those signals faster is to lean more and more, and this will sound also a little bit kind of contradictory, but human creativity as the driver of everything we do. So AI is effectively an enhancer of giving us the tools to, sort of crunch data at scale, being able to, scale ideas and personalize at scale in a way that we couldn't before. But the human aspect of it is inherent. And we see creators as kind of the epitome of that human extension of the idea. So kind of flipping the role of the creator from being a mere channel that, like anything else you can buy and out of home that is kind of in the right place, is not that. It's actually understanding that they have a very, very important role with our audiences. And once we understand the connectivity, and we're talking about micro influencers in the hundreds of thousands, not just 5 people that we pick, with our hands, then that is a different way to work. And so, it's proving very successful.
Yeah, as a sports brand and a sports retailer, authenticity is really important to us. So no matter what the format of the content that we're producing, that's always the bar for me. And so whether it's something unpolished or super polished, long or short form, scripted or not, that's the sort of screen that we bring to looking at anything that we're going to put in the marketplace. Will an athlete look at this piece of content and relate in some way and feel that that represents the true experience of that sport? And that's been the bar for us, and it's worked well. Whether we're doing a piece of social content or a long form film, it's critically important across the board. And everyone who screens a piece of content for us comes at it with that lens. I'm not the best golfer, but we have hundreds of golfers in the building who will look at every swing and every movement and say that feels authentic to the sport. There's tons of folks who've run or played baseball or played football and know what a true athlete in that space looks like. And so for us, that's really the bar. And I don't look at it as unpolished or polished. It's the piece of content in the form that's the most appropriate for the channel that we're putting it in. And then it should all be quality. It should all really stand for the brand. So
I'm going to go a little off script because I think there's an interesting dynamic here. You mentioned the channels. Are there any instances where you used a channel that you would typically associate with, let's say, a less polished video or more raw piece of content, where you find that polish works, and then vice versa?
Yeah, we're actually, we have a series out right now with iShow's Speed, and it's called Speed Goes Pro. It's on YouTube. And we certainly could have gone sort of low budget and tried to not invest in quality in that piece. But for us, it was really important not to only make sure it was authentic, but to also make sure it was a good piece of content that people wanted to connect to and felt was done in a quality way and that we invested in. And so honestly, I think there's some ways to make things look raw, but for us, it's really important to bring polish and investment to some areas, sometimes niche sports or niche channels that are starving for quality content, right? So if we can invest in the space and do something that hasn't been done before, that's really important for us. So.
I like that. Scott, this is a question for you. Okay. Target often talks about bringing joy to everyday life. How do you move beyond selling things to telling stories that create emotional connections with consumers?
Good question. So a really good example of that is I'm going to talk about fandom again, and I think bringing joy to all facets of consumers and fans. A collection that we recently did for the 30th anniversary of Pokemon is a good example of that. So to celebrate that anniversary, we created a exclusive collaboration with them that was a lifestyle collection to celebrate their 30th anniversary. And the way we started that from the beginning inside Target was all of the internal designers that designed the collection were super fans. And then when it got to my team and thinking about how are we going to market this, how are we going to creatively tell this story through a social lens, we did the same thing. We brought the most super fans together, and some of those super fans actually worked on the product too, because the internal design team was all sort of like colluding on it together. And then when it came to how are we going to get this out into the world, we did the same thing. We brought the biggest super fan creators of the brand into an exclusive experience where they saw the collection early. We created giant immersive Pokemon worlds. There was a giant Pikachu there. So like it kind of blew their minds when they walked in the door, and all of that authenticity was captured by them and by us. But then when they started telling those stories, I think the joy of the Pokemon super fans, like all of the main comments for all of the superfan content creators that were in it, it was about the joy of just them being able to have that experience. Like other Poke fans couldn't believe, like, oh my gosh, you got to do this, you got to see this, you got to be a part of it. So it was kind of the ultimate expression of the way something that we could do that was commerce created a really joyful experience from start to finish for not only the internal team, but then for the super fans and for the people that really loved and were excited about the products.
I love that. And it's safe to say, I feel like if you're a big Pokemon fan, you're going to know if the colors are wrong on Pikachu.
Absolutely.
Just like Mark, you'll know if the swing is wrong for golf, right?
That's right.
So back to that authenticity. Fabio, this one's for you. You've said your ambition is simple. Leave the brands stronger than you found them, but you're also managing brands that are already among the most distinctive in any category. How do you balance that?
It's quite daunting when you put it that way. So I don't know if you were at the session yesterday with Susan Cradle accepting the Lion of St. Mark, which is incredible as a legacy for her career. And she was presenting the genesis of giving the M&M's characters, you know, the cheekiness and fun and sort of icon stature that they have today. So it feels our job really is to continue on that journey. And for a marketeer, it's so easy to be tempted by changing things, by finding, being the person who made this mark on a particular part of the brand. So restraint is an important part of what we do. And that is not to be confused with kind of being complacent. We do a lot of activities, and obviously these are brands that are growing, Twix, M&M's, Snickers, to name a few. So the key element for us to move the brand forward with, a new generation of consumers is to understand how the shifts in society, in technology, are shifting the ways that people are, in the way that people are selecting brands. And that becomes an incredibly exciting brief as a marketeer, because we really are embracing all the possibilities we have today for storytelling. In fact, we're talking more and more about story building as a way to really kind of give the brand meaning, put the brand in the hands of consumers. One example I have of that, probably have heard, shortlisted a few times, just putting this out there, but the idea of M&M's Protect the Peanuts campaign, which is effectively the culmination of 10 years of hard work by scientists, farmers, effectively to reinvent that legume because it's very, very susceptible to the effects of global warming. So Mars stepped up to really do something that wasn't just beneficial for the business, of course it was, but it was beneficial for the farmers, for consumers, and even our competitors because it's open source. So that's a way to keep a brand relevant. It's a third of our business for M&M's is that the peanuts M&M's, so it's super, super important. But doing away and the storytelling, reaching consumers. We had the first complaint on the quality of which we couldn't do anything about because it was something that, it's just the effects of global warming. We found the first person who complained on Reddit. 10 years ago. We contacted with the help of Reddit. We flew that person to our M&M store in New York to test a new product on the culmination of 10 years of science. He liked the product very much, so just to put that very clearly. So fantastic. That kind of is one of the many examples of how we are, story building with our consumers, with our creators more and more, and really utilizing technology as per that example to enhance human creativity as opposed to replace it.
I have to ask, what was the complaint?
So I'm going to get technical very quickly. So only 1% of all peanuts qualify to be inside an M&M's. So for a number of reasons, which I won't get into, just the minor crack on one of the lentils normally wouldn't be an issue. But because of the effects of, the peanuts being kind of eroded over time, it would create that particular one going stale, and the taste was very, very sort of pronounced. Like you could tell that something was wrong. And there was nothing we can do because we were testing. Quality is one of the principles at Mars. We were testing everything, but this would happen several months after the product, or a month or two after being in shop. So this is where we could have chosen. All right, let's hope this goes away somehow. Let's not even engage with someone, let alone someone who complained 10 years ago. But we did, and we are very, very happy with the outcome of that.
That's amazing. Did anyone else know that? 1% of peanuts?
News to me.
I think that was the story I was told.
Peanuts for everyone, please, after the end of this conversation.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. So Mark, you mentioned two very different strategies, right? You have this very polished cinematic show with I Am Speed, and you have the 60 plus creators. That's everybody from parents to people that work in the store, team members, etc. How do you decide when to go which route?
It depends. We try to build the content to meet the audience. So if we're doing something out of our studio that's a film, and we want to tell a story in that environment, we understand that there's a number of different ways that we can go about that. To date, we've done mostly unscripted shorts, maybe a little bit longer in a couple of series. But it's easy, honestly, to make the decision because the audience and what their expectations are really drive the content that we produce ultimately. Right. So when I'm doing a piece of creator-led content for Varsity Team, there's not a lot of discussion about what that content's going to look like. We know going in and we have certain expectations. When I'm doing a film, I know what I want, and there's a certain brief for that as well. And everything in between, whether it's a piece of social content that we're producing or a 30-second ad, there's always a brief and a set of expectations that we go into. And then ultimately we have a set of objectives, and those objectives vary across all those pieces of content as well. So yes, some of it is just pre-planning up front and knowing what it is you want and what role you want that piece of content or creator-led content to play in your mix. So.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Lana, I do want to go back to you. I have a question. So you mentioned, obviously, you're working in a highly regulated industry. What was that process like to get the ability to use UGC content more frequently? Was it
Exhausting?
Exhausting.
How's that for truth?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, in a regulated brand, your best friends are your compliance folks.
Yep.
And so I would say like pushing back to like what really is the regulation. I can have a conversation with my CEO about what's our risk appetite as a brand. And so I have worked hard to say, I don't need compliance's interpretation of that. I would like you to identify the risk based on the regulation. And I will go have a conversation with leadership about our willingness to live into that. And so really going back and look at, I've overwritten compliance policies. We've gotten perspective from outside counsel, and then a lot of internal conversations on behalf of both compliance and our legal teams. So not only is our brand subject to some of that, but one of the other places that we're feeding content into this ecosystem is directly from our financial advisors. So I also want to unlock opportunities for our financial advisors to almost be internal creators and makers, to strengthen, real conversations of their clients. And so I don't only want to open up and unlock things for the brand. I want to unlock things for everybody operating and living inside the brand too.
I had to ask because that can be no easy feat. We are getting towards the end.
I was just going to ask, did you have to do a lot of convincing and education for your leadership team for them to understand what would really resonate in content in order to get them to change their minds maybe about how strict and conservative some of the things were?
I am fortunate that I have a CEO that absolutely wants to lean into risk, that we know that we have high levels of brand awareness and affinity, I would say in the retiree Midwest space. And so as a brand, we want to grow from coast to coast, and we need to find a way to be relevant to the next generation. So I am fortunate that my CEO completely supports it. And while she supports it, you can only imagine how difficult it is to change behavior and mindsets through the organization that I truly need to get a yes, even though I have her backing 1,000%. So it is still very, very hard, but I'm very, very fortunate at the same time.
That is really impressive. And so we are wrapping up. I'd love to go down the line with a key takeaway. Mark, if you want to.
Sure. Well, one thing I did forget to mention was speed to market, right? So if I'm trying to produce a piece of content for a moment, there are only a number of vehicles that are going to be available to me, right? And so I know if I need to do something to capitalize on the next winning, that's probably going to be lower production, fast turnaround, a piece of creative content that I can get out the door really quickly. Whereas if I want to tell a story about a super fan in Philadelphia and I've got 2 years to tell that story, I can go off and produce a film. And so the one thing I would just take away is it just depends on what the sense of urgency is around a piece of content or moment that you're trying to capitalize on. And for us, we try to pick the content that fits best to the moment. So
I was going to quickly just ask, so for that in particular, how do you not let perfect get in the way of immediacy, right?
We honestly give our creators a lot of room and space to do the things that they're brought in to do. And perfect, honestly, is not really that important. Authenticity is always going to be important to us. And so we'll kill a piece if we think it doesn't speak to the athlete. But this idea that it has to be perfectly polished and every note has to be perfect is not really critical. Not for a piece of content. To me, it's more important that we meet the moment. So if I want to go out and celebrate New York Knicks fans, and I keep saying that because I am one, I want to make sure that I get it out the door. I don't care that it's absolutely perfect, but it's more important that I was there than I wasn't there and didn't have a piece of perfect content. So
I've never bought more Knicks gear than the last 3 weeks. My daughter has it. My wife has it. We all have it.
Outside of the Chicago Cubs win, it is by far the biggest hot market moment for us in our history. And so it has been phenomenal, not only as a fan, but also as an employee. So
Love that. What about you, Fabio?
I would say just one thing with three components. So people, creativity, and technology, and in that order. Really, that's the answer to most of the things that we are discussing this week. Certainly, the example on creators, certainly on how to build a brand. So easy to say, difficult to do. But as long as we remember that creativity is inherently human, ambition is inherently human, and we can use technology to liberate us from complex and tasks that are not that important, in the day, every day, to be able to focus on creativity. I think we have probably the best moment to be a marketer, a creative ever. So I'm very excited.
I would just say, just listening to all of you, I think when any one of us we all know our businesses and we all know our consumers. And if you really dig in and listen to your fans and look at what they're talking about, what they're passionate about, I think it's really digging in and figuring out the right way to authentically amplify those stories, sometimes just by like putting some gas on the stories that are already there, but really then finding the people and lifting them up and maybe helping them create more content to tell those stories, because that's what your consumers want. What they're already talking about is sitting right in front of you. And I think there's always a huge opportunity to think about how you amplify that.
And I would just leave us with, I think about as marketers, we are living in this era where scrolling is being compared to secondhand smoke. So what is our challenge as marketers is to have our brand be a force for good, to, unite people as loneliness is at an all-time high, as a sense of belonging is at an all-time low. So as brands, can we create spaces, whether that's in real life, whether that's virtually, to connect, inspire, and bring joy to others? So that is the challenge that I leave all of you with.
That's amazing. All right. That was fantastic, guys. Thank you so much for a wonderful panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.